Well, hey, North Bar Community Church. Pastor Luke here with another episode of First Looks. And I am maybe staving off a little bit of sickness coming after me, so the voice might sound a little deeper today. And for that reason, I might keep this a little briefer today, which might be what some of you have been hoping for. And so let's go ahead and just start looking at our text together. Our passage today is Matthew. It's going to be in chapter 17. We're going to finish up the chapter by looking at verse 22 all the way to the end, which is verse 27. And then after this week, we'll be pressing pause on Matthew as we enjoy our Advent series through the rest of the year. And then we'll pick back up right where we left off in chapter 18. And so to finish this up here, this chapter, remember we had Transfiguration. In the beginning of 17. Then we had the healing of demon possessed boy. And now what we saw last week was coming down the mountain. And from mountaintops to valleys is kind of how we framed up last week's message. Now, as we look at the beginning of our verses here, which is in 22, it says, as they were gathering. Now, we can maybe take this to be that the 9 were catching back up with Peter, James, and John and Jesus after this whole situation went down with the demon, casting out the demon from the boy. This could be them kind of catching back up together. What's most important is that we see that it is Jesus plus the full 12, and they're in Galilee. And this is, remember, they were up in Caesarea Philippi, way up here, and they're on their way to Jerusalem, way down there. And then as they're on their way down there, the region of Galilee is going to be right here by the Sea of Galilee. And this is kind of home base. And so it would make sense that they stop back by there, maybe each returning to their own families, to their homes, villages in the area, maybe just to spend some time with family and collect provisions for the journey down to Jerusalem. Those are some things that we would just maybe assume, but text doesn't say. But while they're kind of gathering, just kind of regrouping, maybe loading up in Galilee, Jesus says to them, "Son of Man is about to be delivered into the hands of men." About so soon, delivered into the hands of men, and they will kill him. But he will be raised on the third day. Now we've had some references to this coming resurrection of Jesus, but here this is the second foretelling of his impending death. The first one would be see chapter 16, but now includes resurrection hope. But something is still not being caught by the disciples because they are greatly distressed. So we could say maybe still not comprehending all the way. All right. So Jesus gives the second foretelling of his impending death, and then they get to Capernaum. So Capernaum, still in the area of Galilee. Still in the region of Galilee. But Capernaum in particular was where Peter is from, and maybe we could say very reasonable to assume staying at Peter's house. That's reasonable to assume, but it's not necessarily the case. And the collectors of the 2 drachma tax say, "Ooh, the 2 drachma tax." The 2 drachma tax was not a Roman tax, rather a Jewish temple tax is what that was. And the Jewish temple tax would have been probably an annual collection that was taken from every male that's between like 20 and 50ish or so, and it's just part of the way in which you fund temple activity, staffing it, protecting it, keeping up the grounds and maintenance, all that stuff, fixing broken things, all the stuff that comes with this massive just temple ministry that's going on. And so there's tax collectors that are up there, but not the same way that we think of tax collectors like Levi or Zacchaeus, something like that, who were gouging their fellow citizens, their countrymen, by taking above and beyond what the Romans were requiring. This actually would have been seen more of as viewed more positively as a patriotic tax. And so it was much more understandable, and would have been, the guys who are collecting this aren't gouging the people they're taking from. And the temple is kind of the temple is kind of that just a national identity and symbol of identity, and the national and civic and religious kind of identity is all bound up together in the temple for Israel. There was no separation of church and state for Israel, and so much more willing to pay the 2 drachma tax. But it was still a newer a more new institution, this tax. It's not one that is required according to the Mosaic law. They would base it on some Mosaic laws that were there, but this is a relatively newer tax that had developed. But as mentioned, it was understood very differently, suffice it to say. So these two collectors, they go up to Peter and they say, does your teacher not pay the tax? And the disciples do as teacher does, as just kind of a general rule. So that's why we see oftentimes the disciples are approached as when people are inquiring about Jesus, because they should know, and so they're asking, does he not pay the temple tax? And we would say Jesus has said tough things about the temple, and the Jewish leaders who run it. So that would have been the Sadducees, are the group that run the temple. They make up the priesthood. The Pharisees, though, obviously would have been very much involved with things that happened there, and collectively the Pharisees and the Sadducees would comprise of members of each group would comprise of the Sanhedrin, the ruling, the Supreme Court, so to speak, of Israel. And Jesus has had hard things to say about the Pharisees and Sadducees, and he's said some ominous things about the future of the temple, and some confusing things, and so it's not shocking that these collectors ask where Jesus stands on the temple tax. And so as they ask, Peter says, yes, he does. We don't know why Peter says this. Maybe because he's seen Jesus pay it in the past. Maybe because he's trying to avoid confrontation. It doesn't exactly say. I think I'm probably, I would lean towards saying something like, Peter knows that Jesus has paid this in the past, and maybe just because Peter understands the purpose of this tax going towards the upkeep of the temple, and would think, why wouldn't we? It's our duty to do this. So don't really know kind of where Peter's coming from when he responds. But here's where it gets interesting, is that when he came into the house, Jesus spoke to him first. Jesus spoke to him first. And so again, this might have been Peter's house right here. And that might have been why he was addressed. It might also be why there's an absence of the other disciples at this point. They're not mentioned anywhere in this. And as we'll see, Jesus foots the bill for him and Peter, but not the other disciples. And so they may have, by this point, between this first part where they're all gathering up in Galilee, they may have each gone their own way, in which Jesus went with Peter to his house in Capernaum. That seems the most likely scenario to me. And so they're talking, and Jesus starts it first. He says, what do you think, Simon? It's always dangerous when Jesus asks a question. What do you think, Simon? From whom do the kings of this earth take toll or tax? And so this is the main teaching here. And then the question, from whom do kings of the earth take toll and tax? From their sons, option 1, or from others, option 2. And this is also could be rendered strangers. That's the question. And when he had said, this is Peter, from others, Peter's response, Jesus says to him, then the sons are free. And that right there, that's the meat and the potatoes of the story. That's the main lesson. The sons are free. And so Jesus, he teaches a point in a parabolic form by equating this temple tax to kings of the earth. Now, let me get a close color, but a different. Yeah, I'll make it just clear. Okay, so let's kind of look at what Jesus does here. So, king's tax and the temple tax. Temple tax, and we just want to say God is king of temple. God is king of the temple. And so does the king of the temple do what do worldly kings do? And then Jesus can say, let's go ahead and let's translate that to the King of Kings. And so do monarchs collect tax from their sons? No. That'd be ridiculous, because the son's money is the king's money. He'd be paying himself just by way of his children. Plus, the children, they're of the monarchy. They're royalty. You don't pay. It just doesn't work that way. And Jesus is mapping that same logic onto his status in relationship to the king of the temple. And when he says sons right here, we should immediately be thinking of this is my son. From the Father, from the King. The King of the temple at the beginning of this chapter designates Jesus as his son, says listen to him. And so the point here is that Jesus has no obligation to pay. He actually has good reason not to pay. However, it's a really important lesson here, even though the main point, sons are free. Jesus is the Son of the Father, who is the King of the temple. But there's still another important lesson in here. Not to give offense to them. And we see that for Jesus, freedom is not to be misused for unnecessary offense. Jesus will pick his fights, and he's got no problem standing up to the Pharisees and the Sadducees when what they're espousing, what they're promoting is contrary to the king and the kingdom. But this one right here, it's not an unreasonable tax for this really important just ministry in the temple. And so Jesus doesn't have a moral qualm with this particular tax, and so he doesn't have a problem paying it. He's making a point about his identity, but he doesn't have a problem with the tax itself. And so he says there's no reason not to pay it, because as the king owns everything, well, the son also owns everything. And when you're talking about God being king of the cosmos, well then you've got money whenever you need money, and you can pull it out of the mouths of fish, apparently. So he says to Peter, go to the sea, cast the hook, take the first fish that catches that comes up. When you open its mouth, you'll find a shekel, which equals about 2 days' wage, and it equals four drachma. So the in the ESV here, it's called the 2 drachma tax. You'll see different translators do different things with it, but it's the shekel is equals 4 drachma, and so it just works out nicely there. That he says, then take that, give it to them for me, for yourself. Now here's the interesting thing. We see sons plural, and Jesus is joining Peter with himself in son status, which we would have a lot more New Testament corroborating verses to support this adoption theology. We look at Romans 8 and other places. Don't know that Peter's picking up on all of this in the moment, but I think we can take the rest of the New Testament. We can see this happening here, that this is the precursor of Jesus bringing others into the community of the kingdom, but also bring them into sonship status. And not only that, and Jesus pays the bill. And I'm going to stop there, because then I'll be getting into what I think is going to be the trajectory of the sermon. So I'll let you mull it over and anticipate where this is going. But this is just 6 verses right here. But there's depth, there's substance, there's a lot that's coalescing around in this kind of strange, obscure story. The story is only found in Matthew's gospel. It's not in Mark, Luke, or John. And it just seems to be kind of a weird interaction about this temple tax, and a weird response by go catch a fish and find a shekel in it, and then pay it, and then let's go about our day. And either way, it's good, it's rich, it's the Word of God, and there's something for us. And so, please be praying for me, church, that I can just recoup health a little bit here, and especially in the voice department, so that I can just preach effectively on Sunday. And please pray that this would just all kind of come together into the message that the Lord would desire for us to receive as His people at North Park Community Church. I love you, my brothers and sisters, and I will see you in a couple days. God bless.